Welcome back to Oneself. My name is Stephen Maher. With me today, and with me always, is Adam Bartleman. We got some nice ocean sounds behind you, brother. That's a very it's kind of soothing, man. I really like, hearing the ocean.
Yeah, man, me too. It's lovely.
Yeah. We're gonna go for a little dip later. We'll see. But first, man, we're gonna have a lovely conversation. And what I want to talk about is just like priorities, right? I want to talk about it on a societal level, and then Adam, I want us to dive, macro, micro, right? We were talking about that last episode, right? How we can dial that into the individual as well. Something I see in society, and again, I'm in an American society, but I've traveled, like we both traveled the world, and so it's like I have some perspective on, how people view things and see things in different parts of the world. But from my perspective, currently, people's priorities are out of whack, right? And what does that mean? It means they're putting anger and vitriol and energy into things that, yes, might matter, but there are much more pressing concerns on that list that I think have that should be way more on your mind than, just arguing left versus right, or whatever sort of identity politics are riling people up and getting people to hate each other, which I think is also by design. What am I talking about in terms of like what should be the higher priorities? The things that affect all of us, which is, cost of living, housing, food, good food, access to clean water, electricity, right? Healthcare, affordable healthcare, and like, so like these things that are crucial and that impact everybody should be like the list that we should have to keep our eye on the ball on, right? And I see people often arguing, like, yes, people are aware of those things, and yes, they're complaining about the cost of groceries and all this stuff, but they let the small things, which I think are put there by design to just like stir the pot and like get people to feel more animosity and hatred towards each other. When in reality, those things are affecting everybody. We might disagree on how to make the world better while keeping those things in mind, but I think what can unite far more people than divide them, which I see a lot of division in this world right now, um, is just understanding that those are the things that truly matter, right, for everybody, and that's the thing that we need to focus on. And when it comes to the individual too, right, like when it's we talk about macro and micro. It's like those are things that we can do as a collective societal group to improve the lives of everybody, right? And our priorities. And I see people's individual priorities also out of whack, right? When it's, focusing on the wrong things. And that might be, a matter of opinion in my, we've talked about money in the past, right? And freedom, and like, money isn't important. And some people, money is their main priority, right? But for me, it's like, money's useful. It's not my main thing. It's not what I'm trying to do to live. So it's like, again, my priorities might be different from someone else, but it's just, yeah, man, I just see a misalignment with so many people when it comes to the bigger scale of priorities and when it comes to the individual, and their priorities. And I just want to talk about it. I just want to talk about it and open the floor.
Yeah,
And so,
man.
yeah, Adam, any opening thoughts on, priorities, on the large scale, and then
Yeah.
maybe we can dive into the individual.
Yeah, well, I think we've mentioned it before, like that old hierarchy of needs model. There's that Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which was borrowed from an indigenous culture, I believe. And really, like, it comes down to that for most when we're looking from the sort of uh, physical level. We're looking from sort of the more surface level, like what are the needs that we should be prioritizing based on our circumstances and our beliefs and where we're at in the world, where we are in the world physically, and what our background is. That's It's all going to influence it. And yeah, multiple times throughout my life, I've really sat there and pondered how some of my problems really seem like first world problems, and how some of the people that I've known who have gone through different experiences, or come from different places in the world with profoundly different experiences, like growing up in conflict and war or anything like that, how their perspectives are incredibly different. Again, we mentioned before we hopped on, um, the concept of intersectionality, and the myriad different experiences that people can be having within, a pretty similar place, like in a same geographic location. And then we're looking at also the fact that everyone's living a completely different reality on this planet, It's not just, each group kind of thinks similarly, like really there are over 8 billion different realities going on this planet, like completely different. So priorities are going to be as varied as that, right? And obviously we'll see some patterns in groups, and we discussed this kind of North American example a lot, and kind of our perhaps like spoiled take on a lot of things, but um ultimately, I think that conversation can go on forever. That can just loop, and and just go on and on and on, because for me, what's at the root of that is like, or underpinning that whole thing is like missing the point on like the main priority, which is spiritual development. So like no matter what we're doing, whether someone's priority is like money or reputation or fame or whatever, all of those things you can't take with you when you die. And our purpose here is to evolve, as far as I can see. And when we're remembering that we're not just like humans, and then maybe we can like dip into having a spiritual experience and reminding ourselves that we are spirit, we are souls having a human experience, that can help to, in my opinion, help to refocus the priorities a little bit, bring them into focus, and yeah, just give some perspective, because we spend a lot of time worrying about shit that absolutely does not matter. And that's not to like, try and say that anyone's doing anything wrong, but just to perhaps offer a different take, which is when we focus on our spiritual well-being, we can really chill out, because it actually does end up trickling down into all other aspects of our lives, and causing improvement across the board. So that's, just to kick it back to you, quickly, but in summary, just like a short response there is just like, spiritual priority, you know, that's the real priority, in my opinion, that can open things up for people. But at the same time, the discussion is still interesting to look at where the different priorities lie on with different groups.
No, absolutely. No, I think I think that, yeah, that should be the highest, right, in my opinion. And but it's hard to
Yeah,
do that, right? When again, when you're not with the hierarchy of needs, what it's like when when, yeah, you're hungry, or and you don't have somewhere to stay. It's like, can you still attempt to achieve that? Absolutely, right? And oftentimes, like monks, for example, in my mind, it's like, they're living in um minimalist lifestyles on purpose, right? In order to, achieve that sort of thing. But if someone's, again, we talk about the fight or flight often. If someone's in that fight or flight mode, it's like you can't achieve that spiritual growth really if in survival mode, right? And something too, it's like even in the realm of spirituality too, dude, it's like even that I can see people get warped. And we talk about charlatans, and my experience growing up in Catholicism, brother, like it's like
yeah,
it was so rooted in fear. Like the hypocrisy at the same time was so rooted in, like Catholics in fear and shame and guilt, but it's God's also love and Jesus loves you. Like it's a very confusing message to
yeah,
receive as a child, and I've come to the conclusion that, yeah, like it's love, right? Like it's like love, is really the underpinning of spiritual growth for yourself, for others, for this world, for this planet. But when you try to see other people on the path of, this, they're in service of God, or, the, universe or creator, whatever you want to call it. I think it's all the same. There's a hypocrisy oftentimes I see, and so it's like, even then, even in the realm of this like spiritual growth, it's just like you got to be you got to be careful with who you talk to, and and who you seek guidance
Yeah,
from, because there's there's people scamming, right? Scamming people with that. And when people are lost and searching for community and for love, you're vulnerable, right? You're
yeah,
vulnerable to that sort of influence.
absolutely, and kinda like you said before with the larger systems in place on this planet, most of them are put in place with the mind to create division and to create distortion, and because that's so deeply embedded in our experience and like our cellular memory, essentially, it ends up coming out even when we're trying to do good, right? With someone's I don't think too many of the people on that path of being the charlatans, the spiritual fuckboys out there that we've discussed before, actually set out to do that intentionally, because if they did, they would be, like psychopaths or sociopaths. And well, not to say that there aren't those people in that space, but I don't think that would be accurate to say of everyone who's on that path who is yet exhibiting those behaviors. And so, like people show up with good intentions, they're trying to do the right thing, and that programming is so deep in there to uh essentially start to feel that they need to control things in whatever way that is making sense to that distorted mind in the moment, and ends up being the case where um that kind of thing starts to take place, that division, that control, and then, like you said, it just becomes another space for confusion and distortion. Uh, you know, yeah, best intentions, and it doesn't go so well.
Yeah. I guess the point of raising this discussion on my end is just awareness, right?
Yeah,
It's like I just want to try and bring awareness to people that, like, I say this to myself all the time. It's like, don't sweat the small stuff, right? It's like when I mountains out of molehills when it comes to the small stuff of just, when it comes to other people, when it comes to or societal issues at large, but it's like I can't change the society, but I can impact my community. So when it comes to, a community, like, I work with my neighbors, right? They're organic farmers, and I'm like, they always know that, like, if they need help for a harvest or anything, it's like they can call on me. And so it's like that's my, the hierarchy of needs. I'm like, okay, food, like, like I try to get that
yeah,
covered within my local community as much as possible. Energy, I can't do much about. That's a goal of mine too, is just, off grid, right? Just to not be,
yeah,
just to like have a source of energy for others, and or for the people that are important to me. But because again, it's this weird system of, I think the systems in place, they try to create dependency. Dependency on food, dependency on energy, yeah, just dependency, right? Dependency on the healthcare system. They don't wanna, in my opinion, they don't necessarily want to cure you of an ailment. They wanna, like, continually medicate you because it's like it's more
yeah. Get a
profitable.
repeat customer.
Yeah, and it's just like, so because it's more profitable. And so it's like they create this weird system of dependency, I think, on purpose and by design, right? And I just want, again, bringing awareness, where it's like to try to, like, as communities, as individuals, as people, to separate the dependency on others and on the systems that are created, in order to just like create a healthier, more sustainable individual, and then community, and then hopefully
Yep,
world, right? If everyone was doing that, you can kind of zoom out.
absolutely. And I think what you're touching on there is like really important, because when we're talking about being in fight or flight, you got to break things off into bite-sized pieces. Like you're saying, like do what you can. And it's easier to do that when we're doing things in community. And the fact that one of the systems of control and division that has been kind of programmed into our consciousness over multiple generations is this whole like self-made person, this lone wolf
Yeah, I
who's a
hate
great
that.
who's a great success, and that actually doesn't make sense with anything about our makeup, which we do everything better in community. And that's why you should be sharing family tasks. That's why kids shouldn't be moving out of the house at 18 or 20 or whatever. They should be, like in how many other cultures in the world, the kids stay home until they get married, and then they're probably living next door. or in a different house on the same property, or whatever it is. Like, as you're saying, traveling, you get to see that. You get to see the way we do it in North America is so twisted, is so like just like it's disturbing, really. Like, all these other
Yeah.
countries, all these other cultures, I should say, are are sharing tasks, have elders living in the house, passing on wisdom, helping raise children. Um, we have everyone sharing costs and breaking things off into bite-sized pieces. When you're in this hyper individualized culture, everything's on you all at once. Well, yeah, that guess what, that's going to keep you in fight or flight, because you're going to be panicking trying to get things covered. That's not how we bring about our best creative selves. We need to be we need to be more at peace and at rest in order to focus on um, the spiritual growth without it coming crashing down entirely, in the personal experience, in order to get pushed to go there. So, I think your opinion there, that it's difficult to do if you don't have those basic needs met, is absolutely true in the experience. Like, I believe technically anybody can choose to go on that path at any point and use whatever their struggle is as the fire of purification. But getting to that awareness in a confusing and overstimulated world, it's a big ask. So again, getting to this point of what can we do to be realistic about it. I think, man, this conversation on community keeps coming up. It's all over the place, like, which is great. People are realizing this. Like, we need to be in community. The baby boomer parents who are, hating on the kids, and that are not out of the house at 18. It's like, that's doesn't work. That doesn't work anymore. It doesn't work, especially now, like in this generation where everything's crazy expensive. We're not talking about like the early 80s, when it was easy to get a job out of high school and like buy a
Yeah.
house with like a single income family, like buying a house and
Yeah.
having two cars. It's like, that doesn't exist anymore, as we know. So, um it's kind of interesting how it's pushing, like, the conditions are actually pushing us back to where many would argue, and I would agree, ought to be, in terms of being back in community. Get the family compound going, like, have grandma and grandpa and your aunts and uncles and cousins, like, everybody living on this, like, on one property, sharing tasks. Yeah, growing food. That's amazing. Like, and the mental health benefits are like immeasurable. Like, raising
Yeah.
children, we're not meant to raise children in like with like a dyad, like two parents. It doesn't make any sense. The nuclear family thing is a really, really toxic model that was as a result of industrialization and, post-war suburban growth, and, roads in America and North America, and car manufacturing going up. And, it's a corporate, it's a landscape that benefits the corporations. And we're now, feeling the effects of all of that toxicity, just like, we can see how that part of human history contributed so much to the physical damage of our environment, and now we're paying the price. It's the same thing spiritually and mentally. And we're getting to this place of recognizing that we're being pushed back to, like, it's like nature, it's like life, earth is all working together to push us back to where we ought to be, which is being in community, being together, not being so separated, not hanging on to separation consciousness. Because, like I would say, at the absolute, like, foundation of this whole thing is this denial of our true nature, which is one. We are all together here. We're all one. And if we are denying our nature of being connected with God, then we're also denying our nature of being truly connected to everyone else. And it's not that big of an ask to start to recognize, at least, that you're connected to your family. Most people can start to wrap their heads around that a little bit. However, considering, of course, how profoundly narcissistic our society has gotten, it can still be difficult in some instances. But that's a great place to start. Recognize your community, like, reach out to them. recognize how distorted it's gotten. Recognize that we've got people who are committing suicide without ever having asked told any of their friends they were even feeling bad, or having reached out to a therapist. It's like, that is a symptom of a very sick society. Again, like that's a symptom that is showing that something is wrong. So yeah, just always bringing it back to community. Like, this is something we gotta put into place. And um if no one else is going to do it for us, we have to model it to the world. Because And yeah, it's like, how do we start that, Buy some land with friends, and,
Yeah.
uh, you know, there are many different ways. There's some cool models in Europe, and I'm sure, other places around the world, but that's all I'm aware of, where they're doing, communal living and stuff. But, yeah, man, community.
Yeah. Yeah, man. I think again, raising awareness, it's like no one is coming to save us. You
Yes.
know? People point towards the government, towards the systems in place. And it's like, yeah, like would it be great if someone just solved all your problems for you? Absolutely. Right? And but that's just not the reality. Like it's like we say actions over words. It's like haven't they shown us they do not care from their actions over decades? And so it's like when it comes to the community side of it, it's like that's impactful. That's where you can form real relationships and it's inconvenient. Like community is inconvenient, but that's the price. When people are like, "Oh, like, I don't owe anybody anything," or whatever, it's like, and but it's like, no, like, what if you need help? You know what I mean? Like, what if your house is on fire, you need support, right? It's like if you weren't there for other people, it's like they're not going to be there for you, and you are going to be in need at some point. And and I'm sure, and it's like don't be too proud to ask for that, especially if you've contributed to it back, you know. And yeah, man, and it's just like yeah, and it's like covering those basic needs is crucial, right? When I was in Chicago, dude, in during COVID, there's kind of a funny story. I went to the grocery store and the entire all the shelves were cleared out during COVID, like the first big like COVID panic. The grocery shelves were cleared out, bro. Cleared out. I've never seen anything like it in my life. Except for one item, which was like broccoli pizza crust. Like it wasn't even a pizza. It was just pizza crust for like to like
Made of
put like
broccoli.
yeah, made of broccoli. And it
Yeah.
was so funny that like everyone collectively was like, I'd rather starve
Yeah.
I'd rather starve than eat broccoli pizza crust. Like, what the fuck is this? So like that was like one of the only items on the shelf. I just thought like, and like in my like fear, I was just like, that's hilarious, and so,
Yeah.
but what does that mean? It's like when we're dependent on those systems, it's like when we don't have, and especially if you're in cities, it's so hard. But like that's why like I love community gardens in cities or like stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's like you still can make an effort, but it's like when we're dependent on the food systems, when we're dependent on, all these other things to take care of ourselves, it's like we're at risk if anything goes wrong. And look at another example was Hurricane Katrina, dude. It's like for society is very fragile, man. It's a very
Yeah.
fragile system, and community is the true like um boundary towards like complete disarray, in my opinion. And so it's like
Yeah.
during Hurricane Katrina in 2005, man, there's a certain point. It's like when things are falling apart that like cops go home, firefighters go home, brother. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
former firefighter. It's like if you're in a natural disaster, you're going home to protect your family, and to take care of your family. Like, there's a certain point where like the systems just collapse, right? Um,
Totally. Yeah. Yeah.
and so it's like when people are like, oh, like that would never happen, that would never happen. It's like it does happen around the world all the time, and it's happened in North America, multiple times in our
Yeah.
lifetime, right?
Yeah.
And so it's like when it comes to this again, questions of priorities, right? And and so like these things are crucial for for a healthy life, for a sustainable life, taking control over our lives, not being so dependent on everything. Not that like, it's like you can't be dependent. It's like, of course I go to the grocery store, but it's like, I also do gardens and, all these other things too, to just put a drop in the bucket towards what I consider to be like a step in the right direction. And to not be completely dependent on something. It's like, okay, like, worst case scenario, it's like I got something, right? Um, but yeah, man, no, yeah, yeah. Again, just raising awareness. It's like society's very fragile, and something too I see coming back in community fashion is like the barter system, right? Like kind of like
That's
the
cool,
the
yeah.
barter economy, dude. So it's like, and I love it. I love seeing that. So it's like people are
Yeah.
trading skills. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
yeah. So it's like
yeah,
they're trading skills. It's like, okay, there's a cool example of again, my neighbor who's the farmer. It's like, so he'll trade food for like car repairs or something. You know what I mean? And with like his
right.
mechanic. It's just like I love that. I love that.
That's
So
amazing.
it's amazing. It's
Freeing,
amazing. It's very freeing, dude.
freeing.
There's no money exchange. There's just, it's just,
No taxes.
no
Yeah,
taxes, just community, right? Just community supporting each other and using your individual talents and skills and your knowledge that you've accumulated and lending that to other people and then, getting something in return.
it's awesome. Because you're so right about, and it's kind of like our last conversation where we were talking about, whatever's happening right now in the world is, we can look at it from the perspective that it's necessary for whatever change needs to come. And while that may be difficult for the people who are very dependent on the systems to hear the point that you just made, which is like, who are you complaining to? Like nobody's listening, nobody's coming, nobody's coming to
No,
help you
no one's
because
coming.
they create they created it's like they've engendered this system in which we have all lost our ability to be self-sufficient because we become dependent on these systems, and then we've also been sold this lie that the system cares about us, the government cares about you, and that is patently untrue. And anyone who wants to argue that point, I would gladly engage in discussion with, because my own personal experience and just again being a keen observer of life, it's like, guys, recognize the patterns because it's clearly not the case. Like we're just numbers to these to whoever's pulling the strings. So yeah, recognizing that nobody's coming to help, and you're totally like, when I used to be a firefighter, I was like, I don't have kids, so like, if something really like heavy happens, like I'll hang out, I'll keep coming to work. But I'm like, the other guys that I work with that have kids, I'm like, yeah, I wouldn't expect you to stay here. I'd be like, fucking go home and take care of your kids. Like, leave the single guys here to fucking take care of anything really nasty, because like that's just how it's gonna go, and it has to. And like you said, there's a certain point where all the emergency services stop coming to work, and probably even the military goes home, and like, so it's just
Yeah.
recognizing that. And but we have been so bred into so just deeply conditioned into being like in so deep in this sorry, in this idea of victimhood, where we don't want to take any responsibility for ourselves. We've abdicated responsibility for ourselves to even think critically. In most cases, just believing whatever the talking box tells us. Like large news corporations dictating the way people think, and it's like at some point you're gonna have to wake up and realize like that just doesn't work. We do have to tap into our own in order to see our priorities clearly. I believe we have to be able to tap back into our own intuition, which is, wresting that control back from the, media outlets that have been telling us how to think for generations, and recognizing that's where true sovereignty comes in, is like first being able to think critically and depend on one's own intuition, and understanding what that means, and going through the process of getting back in connection with that, because we've been so disconnected from it, again, by design. I'm not even going to say my opinion. It just looks so clearly true, by design. And then now it's getting to this point, where we're being pushed to figure it out, and have these conversations in order to bring it more to the forefront. Because yeah, man, it's the conversation on nobody's coming to help you, so we're gonna have to figure it out ourselves, and that might be kind of a split for people, those who are still wishing to remain in the illusion that the government's your friend, and they don't the food they sell you in the grocery store and the packages is good for you, and pharmaceutical companies are also have an interest in getting you better. Like if people want to continue believing in that illusion, then they can, go down with that ship if they want to. And then, there'll be another group of people who choose to truly take back their sovereignty, which is their consciousness, and get their priorities in line in that way. It's just one take on that.
Yeah. Yeah. And we say by design, right? Like these what I consider to be like, malicious systems are built with purpose, you know. They're built with intention. It's not an accident, people are like, "Well, how do things get this way?" It's like on purpose. You know?
Yeah,
It's like, people are either making money or, benefiting in some way. And I was telling this too, where like the healthcare CEO that got like shot by that Luigi Mangione guy or whatever, and like
well, yeah,
and,
okay,
and people were like, people like, like, well, like, murder isn't good. And it's like, yeah, I agree, like murder isn't good. But that guy was committing violence through paperwork. You know what I mean? Like he was murdering, in my opinion, through paperwork, right? Like by denying health life-saving coverage through paperwork, right? And it's just like that's still violence. Like the way he died was very overt, with a
yeah,
gun. You know what I
yeah,
mean? But like, make no mistake that that man was also committing violence, and again, on purpose, right? To be more profitable for that company, to make money for that company. And so it's like these things it's not an accident. None of this stuff is an accident.
no,
But and it's up to us to take it back, or not take it back, but like, again, sovereignty, create, build these systems within our communities to like, have a hand on the wheel, which we don't.
exactly. Exactly, and I think if we get that hand back on the wheel, firstly through waking up and like breaking some of that illusion, like realizing that it's all a fucking lie, because without those kind of wake up moments, it's hard to pull out of it because people are used to their conveniences. They're used to getting their Amazon delivery whenever, they're what their whatever item they're wanting, 12 hours later with and their instant food and all this garbage that poisons their bodies. We've been told through advertisements, is good for you, been tricked into it. So it's comes down to recognizing that it's a lie. And how does that happen? We talk about, you can look at like these systems are by design, and a natural way, next step on that conversation is, a next question can be like, okay, so is it a big conspiracy? And it's like, okay, well, you could look at it that way. Or you could look at it, there's a good George Carlin clip where he discusses that, where it's like, it doesn't have to be a conspiracy. It just has to be um common interests. It's just common interest in narcissism and greed begins to sort of become this like feedback loop for itself, where these systems just are a natural outgrowth of the human ego. They're just a natural outgrowth of greed, and then we end up in these situations. And um and then the people that do wake up and maybe go into a psychosis over it, shoot somebody over it, or we can just start to try and spread that awareness a little bit more. I saw this clip the other day where this guy was discussing the Ford Pinto. I don't know if you heard about this. Like, it's this, like, one of the famous lemons of like the last century, or of all car automotive history. Like one of the one of the shittiest cars was the Ford Pinto, and I think it came out in the 70s. And the story was, the engineers at Ford Motor Company realized that this car had a massive design flaw, which is, It got rear-ended, not even that hard. The gas tank was in the back, and it was a very high likelihood that the car would explode into flames, and the people inside would not have time to get out and would burn to death. And like they modeled this, they figured it out, and they did the math on it, and I think it was like over a few years, they figured that about roughly 3,000 Americans would die. And again, I can't remember these numbers specifically, but I think it was around that. And don't quote me on it, but look it up. Um, Roughly 3,000 Americans would die in like this horrible, horrible death. And the engineers brought it to the board of executives and were like, "Hey, this is the situation. We got to do a recall on this car." And they were like, "Okay, well, let's run the numbers. What would cost more, recalling it or paying out the lump sum lawsuits to each of these families?" And it would affect the stock price less to leave the cars on the road and just pay the individual families for the people that died, rather than do the full recall. And they were like, "Yeah, there was someone who quoted from the meeting who it was later, I guess, Freedom of Information um, Act got this information where they said like it was literally quoted as the person was saying like fuck them, let them burn," and they all and they all laughed about it. And it was like this is the reality that we live in, where it's dollars over people, which is like just
Yeah,
such
profit over
profound
people.
separation. Yeah, exactly. Such profound separation consciousness when we don't understand, like when those guys sitting in that boardroom didn't understand that the people that were going to be burning to death in those cars were them. It's not somebody else, that's you. And if you don't understand that, that is going to be brought to you in the most poignant way possible in some other aspect of in another part of your incarnation or in another one. Like that is simply how the laws of karma work, that it is cause and effect with an understanding that it is magnetized through um this energetic grid that we're all a part of. And it's just it's 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 insane when looked at from that lens of truth to see behavior like that, because it's just like such a profound example of missing the point of what it is to be human. It's like, so save some money, make some more money, all of, or sorry, none of which you can bring with you when you die. Again, no U-Hauls behind the hearses. It's just anyway, back to the conversation though, was recognizing that that is the case. Recognizing that we live in a world where most of those who are supposed to be governing us or taking care of us are prioritizing profit over people. I have a personal story about that in my old job, but not necessarily to get in, not necessarily to get into the details, but I had a poignant example of that in my life where the corporation that I worked for, which was a city, which understand that cities and provinces and
Municipalities.
states, municipalities and complete states, they're not these you know mythical, um just like, well, how would I say that? They're not the way that they are not what we have been raised to think they are. Like, oh, countries just grow out of these, magical founding stories, or going back to William the Conqueror in England, and this is how anyway, whatever, I digress. But understanding that they're all just corporations. Everything's a corporation, and I found that in my personal experience when I kind of got thrown under the bus by my corporation for them to try and save like literally a few $100s. And I was like, man, holy shit! Like I really see that in my experience now, how this is so real. And sometimes that's what it takes, because again, a lot of us don't take it seriously. Like I certainly didn't see it. And didn't take it as seriously as I could have until it was a personal experience for me, which is, um, you know, sad, I guess, but I'm
Yeah.
glad I had it now. And but yeah.
Yeah, man. No, just to dial it bring it back to priorities a little bit, where it's like the priorities of most organizations, corporations, whatever, are so it's greed, right? Like money, the which is unsustainable, Like you can't have infinite growth forever. I'm not saying like I don't hate, like economies or businesses. It's like no, like I get like a lot of cool things have been built out of those systems, but it's like when the incentive is just profit over people month after month, year after year. It's like that where does that end? You know? I don't think anywhere good. You can't have unlimited growth, infinite, for forever, right? And that's what they're trying to do. Oh, the next quarter, the next, and like not only is it
Exactly.
short-sighted, and it's like it's extremely short-sighted in terms of the planet, in terms of the experience of the people living on the planet, right? Where it's like, they don't care if there's toxic dumps, they don't care if there's, stealing all the water out of a community in order to, clean or, use it in their industrial processes or, even just like Nestle, right? Just straight up jacking water from a community and putting it in bottles and, shipping it around the world, which is like, we've seen that too. It's like that is their highest priority, which oh man, I strongly disagree with, but it's the priority of many, many systems and many people. And it's like, that it only benefits a few, right? Only
Yeah.
benefits a few people and then just causes harm to everyone else. And
Yeah,
I
and
mean, we're
it
seeing this. Go for it.
so no, go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, just I mean, America right now is seeing that with data systems, right? We talk about energy and
Mhm.
water. It's like when a data center is being built near a community, it's jacking
Oh,
up
yeah.
the electricity costs, and then they have to use a ton of water. So it's like it's sucking this water out of the community and then like putting it back, and it's like full of bullshit. You know what I mean? It's just like it's like, and again, in the pursuit of profit, is any of that money going back towards that community or from the data centers? Absolutely not. It's going to, whatever corporation built it.
Yeah. And it's interesting because it's like it always has to it's always like the micro macro reflection. We always have to understand that it is our own personal choices that are reflecting those more macro choices being made where things like that are happening. And again, as use my own example there with oftentimes it has to get personal before we actually take it seriously. Um, That, unfortunately is, like, often the case, on this planet for most people, and, like, as I'm saying, like, I'm not proud of that was my case too, because it wasn't until that really got personal that I really woke up to it on that deep level. Because there are layers to the awareness, we can talk about these things, people can hear the story about those data centers and be like, "Oh, that's awful," and go right back to, buying the product from that company, like, 10 minutes later, and it's like where that switch just gets turned back off. That awareness, because it's like, wouldn't we see if we were truly heart-centered beings, throwing myself in there too, is like, shouldn't I have seen that before and made bigger changes? Shouldn't I have like quit that organization that I worked for earlier when I saw that it was fucking bullshit? But I was like, I wasn't seeing it because it was still working for me on some levels. And that's the thing is like most of these things are still working for people on some level. We're still wanting our fucking Amazon delivery. We're still wanting to get a product that's made on the other side of the world, at a cheap cost. It's still not relevant to people. And it's because of that that we haven't been figuring it out. It's kind of like life whispers to you before it shouts to get the point. Is like now we're having these systems crumble and we're actually finding like suffering on our doorsteps, which is still relatively very little compared to most of the world and world history. But like um, in the North American context, we're actually finding a little bit of suffering coming to our doorsteps, which is not typical and not well, depending on the community again, obviously. Not whitewashing everything, but it is becoming more relevant, and it is a big change for us to be, feeling the effects of our of our actions, not just having our garbage, swept under the rug anymore. It's starting to create some lumps, you know, we're tripping over.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think for the first time in, and again, I get intersectionality, but it's like for the first time, for most people, they're gonna live worse lives than their parents did.
Yeah, totally. Absolutely. Very, very common. Um, yeah, noticeable, like everywhere, every level.
Everywhere, everywhere, everywhere. And, and people and like the older generations too, I see. And I'm not trying to bash I have some lovely friendships in the older generations, so I'm not trying to bash entire generations. I know there's nuance. I know people, but what I will say is that, it's like when it comes to like helping people or whatever, it's like, well, it's a free lunch or whatever. Like I work my ass off, but it's like, okay, yeah, I don't know if I had the time to explain or the capacity to explain empathy to somebody. It's like, isn't the goal to improve like everyone's lives? You know what I mean? I know you've got your good life and and whatever. It's like, you worked hard for your life. It's like, absolutely. But isn't the goal to make a better planet for your children or your grandchildren?
Yeah,
It's like, and their friends and their generation. Like, it's like, I don't understand. Like, it's just like, I might have
yeah.
suffered. So it's like, I want others to suffer?
Well, therein lies the narcissism. Therein lies the massive blind spots and the belief in that bullshit illusory story that they're a self-made person. Because that doesn't even exist, because as much as we have shunned community and pretended that we're individuals, in reality, we have always been supported by community. There's no
Yeah.
and you know what? Like, COVID showed that, right? That was one thing that showed that, because it was like, I was a firefighter at the time, and it was so fucking stupid because everybody was like, saying to me like, "Oh, thanks so much for what you do." And I'm like, "We're doing less than ever. We weren't going on any calls. Like, nobody was calling 911 because they didn't want to go to the hospital. They didn't want anybody, like, it showed how many true emergencies we had because the call volume dropped so dramatically. And I talked to, I know, friends who were nurses who were like, "Yeah, we don't. There's nothing happening. The hospital's a fucking ghost town." Everybody was thanking us and cheering for us, and I'm like, "How about the people working at the grocery store?" I'm like, "How about the checkout guy at the grocery store? That's my hero." Like, we all need the fucking, the grocery store more than we need the fire department. I was like,
Yeah.
I was like,
Yeah.
man, these, and then it was like, yeah, and we need the truck drivers, and we need fucking everyone. Everybody's
Yeah.
a hero. This, like, this whole narrative was just so nonsense. But we exist in community. We always have. I've met the people who claim to be self-made men, and it's like, you're not, though. When you learn the story, and like, you were helped along the entire way, because that's how life works. So as long as we commit to that illusory story of being like the lone wolf, rugged individual, then that'll continue to create that kind of suffering, um, until we get real and recognize the community is the reality, and we should embrace it in order to bring about more peace on our planet, and just harmony in our own lives. Then, like, yeah, that's going to continue, because that narcissism is profound in our society, and we have to look at it within ourselves if we really want to do anything about it. Man, I've spent the last few years digging through my narcissism, because we've all got it. It's part of the human experience at this point, and it's looking at our own shadow in order to clean up the collective shadow. Yeah, man, that's what I would add to that.
Yeah, brother. Yeah. No, it's so tied into just like what people are going through and like how to build a better world. Like it's just like building something better, right? Building something better than like what we currently have. And it's not through in like an individual way. It's not as an
No,
individual, right?
no,
And
shouldn't be looking to
JFK
be
had
the
that.
hero.
Don't be a hero, man. It's like
Yeah,
everyone needs each other, and
yeah,
like, people might be like, this is woo woo or unrealistic, or it's like this is a dream world. It's like that's the fucking point in my mind. It's like,
yeah,
don't you want to dream of something that doesn't exist that is better? It's like that's the whole point. Most things haven't existed until someone has built it. And humans are really good at following, right? They're not necessarily good at leading, or they follow the wrong people, or whatever, but it's like once something good has been built, people recognize it and see it, and then they adapt it and integrate it into their own lives. Is what I've seen.
Yeah.
And, yeah, dude, I just think it's that's worth fighting for. That's worth trying to build for and, trying to strive towards is just yeah, yeah, building up our communities, building up our systems that we're dependent on, like you said, food, right? It's like, oh man, like, if someone goes a day without a meal, they're cranky. You know what I mean? Imagine if someone
Yeah.
goes 3 days without a meal. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like people get
Yeah.
people might get, pretty cranky, pretty violent, pretty quick when they haven't eaten in, 4 or 5 days or, so it's just like,
Exactly.
you gotta recognize that and nurture those things and those systems and and build some of our own, like, when it comes to, something I think is, and then, we can kinda wrap it up, but I'm just like, I don't understand why we don't have, like, more orchards, like, everywhere, like
Mm.
public parks or something, it's just,
Yeah. Just with free food, why not? It'd be just
free
as
food,
easy.
yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's just, but again, by design probably, right, not
By
profitable,
design.
right, it's yeah.
Yeah. None of the female plants are there, it's all the males.
Yeah, yeah, it's like, why can't we just, why not have food I mean, they talk about the indigenous cultures in the past where it's like there were literal food forests. Where it's like, and I see that in the land that I'm currently in, right? Where it's just like when I walk in the summertime, there's blueberries, raspberries, and blackberries everywhere, dude. Like you just go and like,
Yeah, yeah.
have a handful, and it's just like, I'm not wanting for fruit in the summertime where I am,
Yeah, yeah.
and yeah, I'm just like, apply that to a broader scale, but. I digress, dude. I think I really enjoy this discussion on priorities change,
Yeah, man.
and the systems that are in place and what else can be built because no one's coming to save us, dude. So, might as well try and save ourselves as much as we can.
Absolutely. Good place to cap it.
Yeah, brother. Any closing thoughts?
Right on. No, man, just community. Like keep meditating on community because it's the reality. We just gotta stop denying our truth. Deny stop denying and start accepting.
Yeah. Thanks so much, y'all. We'll catch you next time.